Hit the transition button. Yeah, I guess that would that would help. Oh boy, yeah. You would think I would know what I'd be doing by now. All right, that's like I'm sure you experienced this as well too. Is going through a year's worth of Zoom meetings, and the oh so awful double mute, and we still can't figure out how to unmute the phones when we're on a conference calls and so forth. So I don't know if you have any of those any of those challenges.
I'm getting pretty good at all of it at this point after lots of practice.
I think we're almost there. Go to the link. Okay.
Unmute the phones when we're on a conference call.
All right, there you go. I heard myself. I guess we're live. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and get started then. So we're gonna jump right in. So, all right. Hey all, it's Paul from Drums and Rums, where the backbeats meets the spirits, episode number 35. Our podcast for March, we're continuing our celebration of Women's History Month with women who are either in the rum industry or those who are drummers. Our guest is from Crested Butte, Colorado, where after many years of helping clients launch their dreams and brands, she's ready to start creating her own thing while sipping on a rum cocktail on the beach of Belize. So back in 2008, she started Montanya Distillers with her husband by learning everything she could about making rum. She is well known as a pioneer in the rebirth of American rum and only has the passion for making quality rum. I'm sorry. And not only, sorry, let me reread that. Not only has the passion for rum, I mean mountain rum, but also sustainability, diversity, and community. As also a podcast about drums and music, I love the way she described what is the most interesting part of what she does. She is the conductor of Montanya Distillers. Karen is constantly setting the tone for the Montanya Orchestra and keeping everyone in tune. When it's working, it's incredibly fun. Occasionally it gets dissonant, and those are the hardest days. I'd like to welcome to the podcast Karen Hoskin, CEO and founder of the Certified B Corp distiller, Montanya Distillers. Hi, Karen.
Hello, nice to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. So we were just chatting there. I already asked you the question here was what the weather was like in Colorado. So, and you said it's coming down. So,
Yes, it's snowing hard, these are the days we love because this is what brings us, joy if you live at 9,000 feet in the mountains.
yeah, I grew up in the Northeast, and I've now been in Florida more than half my life, and I do miss some of those snow days. I mean, I guess when you're growing up, it's kind of not the same, but my kids always ask about going to see snow and I said, maybe, and then after I was, looking through the website and then the town and the distiller and everything there, I said to my wife, I said, we're going to Colorado. She's like, well, once we get our vaccinations and I said, it's like a postcard picture, type town and so forth. And she originally, grew up in central eastern New Mexico, right next to Texas. And she reminds me all the time whenever we talk about mountains that I grew up on foothills in the Appalachians, and she grew up in the Rockies.
Sorry, I'm going to sneeze.
Yeah.
Oh,
Bless you, bless you.
we're not allowed to do that anymore. So I'm glad we're on virtual.
Right, yeah, I gotta put my mask on, or you gotta get your hand sanitizers and so forth. So yeah, the Colorado Rockies. So again, first off, happy Women's Day, right? It's a big day for women, and again, for everything that's our for me, my better half, and and a lot of interesting things that we'll get a chance I want to talk to you about. as far as I think three areas. So they'll keep it simple, right? It is rum, obviously, you know, the business and entrepreneurship, and again the music. So I don't get a chance very often. It's usually a lot of the podcasts are you're either one or the other, and I don't really get a chance to have both kind of subjects in that area. So I just noticing on the screen there, if it looks like my face is really red, I'm in a red painted room, so it doesn't look like I've got sunburn. So I know it looks really crazy. So
I hadn't
all
noticed. I love it.
right, thanks. So just want to give just a quick of what I didn't cover about Montanya.
Gosh, where to begin? So we're 13 years old almost. I guess next month marks our 13th anniversary. And, I just have been a rum fanatic myself for more than about 32 years now since my first kind of moment of aha about rum. And you can imagine 32 years ago, people thought I was a lunatic for being excited about rum. It's been a lifelong passion of mine. And when I decided to change careers a little more than 13 years ago, my husband said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to make craft rum." So it's been a wild ride, as you can imagine. But I now have 40 employees, and we send rum all over the U.S. and overseas. And we have a full-scale bar and restaurant, rum bar, and a lot of live music going on during normal times. And we did start to bring some of that back, which is great. So kind of, yeah, my fingers in a lot of pots at Montanya, as you can imagine.
Is that a distiller reference?
Yeah, well, it's more like a bear. It's like a you know, um, Eeyore and
Oh, poo.
Winnie the Pooh or
Yes,
something.
the honey pot. So excellent, and it's I have to definitely give a lot of thanks to Alex over at the Rum Barrel, the blog review website, for introducing me to y'all. And it was funny because he'd asked we had done a podcast a couple weeks ago, and he'd inquired and said, "Hey, have you ever tried this rum?" And I said, "I've never heard of it." And I guess I took it that he was probably a little surprised that here I am in the U.S. not knowing about it, but yet here he's over in the U.K. And while I was doing all my show prep here, and I got the sense that over the last few years prior to the pandemic, your company has put a lot into breaking into the UK market. And I think I think it was on the Inside Radio or Think Radio. I think you mentioned that just basically trying to keep up with the demand that they're looking for, is pretty ravenous. So that's great to be out overseas and outside the U.S. And what kind of separates I guess the European drinkers from the American drinkers, or is it just about the same?
It's funny. People ask me a lot. They're like, "Why I can't get Montagna rum here in Tennessee very easily, but it looks like people in Europe can get it so much more easily than we can here." And like, why is that?
Right.
And I always come back to the fact that it's about partnerships. So we just happened to come upon a really amazing partnership that I think is really groundbreaking in the UK. So it's a company called Skylark Spirits, and they really understand rum in a different way, and they have a lot of events and a lot of so they seem to understand how to sell and build a new brand in a way that many of my US based distributors don't understand.
Hmm.
So you really you can't just throw it up on a shelf and hope people will buy it.
Right.
You have to really surround it with so many opportunities for people to learn and get more information. And that's not really how the world of distribution works in the US, unfortunately. So I especially in a pandemic.
Yeah.
These folks have just like every time blown my mind. So I haven't really, I didn't set out to say I want to sell a whole lot of rum in the UK. I just happened to meet them in Miami at the Miami Rum Congress, the first annual Miami Rum Congress, which that was more than 2 years ago. Um, and we got talking about rum, and they loved the rum, and they loved the company, and we started getting into business. And so it's really, I think Europeans generally love rum. That's, and UK people in the UK generally love rum. The US is still working on that. So, and things made in the mountains of the US are they're considered to be pure and beautiful overseas, which helps me a lot. For sure.
And to lead into mountain rum. So when I'd mentioned to a few folks about, the upcoming podcast with you and how, there's a different science to making rum, 9,000, 7,000, 9,000 feet, above sea level, it's a different outcome than what most are. Can you talk a little bit about what mountain rum is and a little bit of that how that kind of came about, or how you?
Yeah, for sure. So the real aha moment about starting a company for me took place. I was in Belize, but I was also in Guatemala on that trip, and I started to learn about the traditions in Guatemala of taking rum up into the mountains to age. And I'd never heard of that. So every time I had come across different rum companies, different rums, it was always in this mode of, well, it would be great if I could do that in my mountain community, but it's kind of an island or a beach thing. And when I went to Guatemala and recognized that the mountains played a huge role in their tradition, and then subsequently went to Colombia and other parts of Central and South America, I just discovered this mountain tradition that I really hadn't understood or known existed. And that was the moment when I thought, oh, maybe Colorado is a great place to make rum.
Right.
And it has been for 1,000 reasons. So the science behind it is really that. I could go on for days about this, from fermentation, where we are able to slow our fermentations down, which is great for producing different types of alcohol. So we slow the fermentations down. In the still, we need to bring the liquid up to a lower temperature in order to be able to distill, which makes a lot of the process of separating alcohols a little faster, a little less energy input, and a little easier.
And I think that, in Karen, that sorry to interrupt, but that was a kind of an interesting tidbit we were talking about, the knowledge and the information that you have on the website, and the way you explain it was how it's like boiling water, right? Everyone knows or has read the back of the macaroni and cheese box about if you live up in way above sea level, there's a different boiling point. And I think that's fascinating, right? And I said there's so much about the rum. I mean, it's very the way I think the way you describe it and the way it's it's written. You think about you close your eyes and the being in the Rockies there and that whole open scenery is very romantic in a sense. To everything from water that comes from the mountain, to all that. Sorry.
Well, and it's true. I mean, I make 80 proof spirits. I'll probably release an overproof in 2021, but up till now I make 80 proof spirits, and in that bottle is 60% water. I mean, that's just the reality. And so I really feel strongly that the water is an underappreciated and critically important ingredient. And if I were in the Caribbean and I were pulling water, I would be pulling it off of, rainwater, roof water, rarely well water, definitely not snow melt or spring fed, fewer options for spring fed water like I have. So it really became became clear to me that water was my number one ingredient, and that I should take it as seriously as people do the sugarcane, anything else that they're working with.
It's kind of like, I guess, Brooklyn bagels, right? Something about the water when they make bagels. So,
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's what they talk about in Switzerland, or sorry, not Switzerland, Scotland, where, you know, the water is very mineralized, and that's part of what makes Scotch so special. The altitude and the temperatures and cool conditions around their barrels is important in the Scotch tradition, and that's true for me. You know, my barrels are aging at 9,000 feet in the mountains, cooler temperatures. We have a lot of kinetic action in our barrels, so a lot of really amazing movement of spirits into the wood, out of the wood. That doesn't really so much happen at sea level unless there are ways to be introducing it through sonics or pressure or other types of strategies that aren't natural to the environment.
And it's interesting that you mentioned Scotland and the reference to making Scotch and so forth. And I'm sure you're aware that there's even a little resurgence or growth happening over in Scotland to craft rum or rum distilling as well. And I had Jamie from Jacobite Spirits on about a month ago, and sharing that story and how Scotch is, you know, still the number one and still mostly known, and people turn their heads and think rum from here, you know, that's just not. And I myself also is Scottish too, so that helps a little bit too. So I guess is that what you would say sets Montanya apart from other American rum distillers?
You know, definitely the mountain aspect of what we do, but also the way we do it. So up until, you know, probably midway through 2021, every drop of our rum will have been made on alembic copper pot stills, which are these, you know, really old school, beautiful direct fire stills. And you know, I've been really committed to that tradition, but it's very hard to scale. So I'm in the process of bringing online a new 500-gallon pot still, but it's steam jacketed. So, you know, there's a lot going on with where our sugarcane comes from, which is family farmers in Louisiana that we work directly with. And then also, you know, the direct fire under our stills is a very different way of making rum from, you know, what a lot of American producers do. And also my combination of ingredients. So I'm not using 100% molasses like a lot of people are doing. I use everything that came out of the sugarcane plant minus its water and its bagasse. So it's not an agricole style. I can't do that at 9,000 feet in the mountains of Colorado, but it includes a lot of the flavors that people associate with a fresh sugarcane juice rum, because there's nothing missing from the sugarcane in my process other than water and bagasse, which usually leaves the system anyway, regardless of where you are.
Right. And this was to where you got to, and I know I probably should have warned you, right? It's probably not going to be the same maybe other type of podcast or, you know, straight conversation, and but where again I'm probably my jumping around probably will kind of where I want to jump back to is the kind of, you know, this area about obviously celebrating Women's Month and women that are in certain industries or careers or pioneers or something is I found it fascinating about, like you said, you're on that beach in Belize, had just kind of was ready for something new, and kind of just said no fear and just kind of just hard charge into it, and you've been working at it and have established, and I guess you go back and look and say, you know, very proud of what you've done and still continue to do today and to establish your company. And I, and on top of it too, Karen, I think I get the sense, and we've only spoken a couple times and so forth, is you seem like a really great person to work for.
Well, I had fired someone on Friday, so
Oh,
he probably doesn't think so.
oh,
But
uh,
you know, it's something that matters enormously to me, to provide a really great work environment and to treat people fairly and to have a diverse environment where it's we're only 60% women, but most craft distilleries in the U.S. are maybe 10% at the most, and so we, especially 13 years ago when I was starting, we just had to break a lot of barriers down to even exist. But I work hard to provide good benefits and make sure people know how much I appreciate them. That I couldn't do any of this without them. A lot of bosses are like, yeah, you got to be grateful for your job, especially in a pandemic and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I should be grateful that I have employees who are willing to
right.
work their way through. I mean, we've been open to the public since June 10th with indoor seating and indoor
Wow.
tours and things like that a lot of my colleagues in this business haven't even been able to do. So I'm super grateful for my staff that have been willing to be on the front line of that. And yeah, it's a big deal. People are the most important thing, I think. Can't make rum without good people.
You're yes, and you're so exactly right, and your excellent point is, especially when you somebody starting out a business and trying financials are probably very difficult in the beginning and then continue on. And I the place I work at when I'm not doing the podcast, our leadership recognizes and that their number one asset and their competitive advantage, they feel, is you know their employees, right? So I think you touched upon a little bit about it, the company culture there, and the diversity, because again, if there's only one kind of thing, then you never know what else there could be without a diverse workforce, or people bringing different things to the table. So, but yeah, I think that's pretty important thing.
It really is. And, we live in a seasonal mountain town economy. So there are a lot of people here who struggle to have enough work all year round. They get laid off in the off seasons and can't necessarily keep their houses going and all of their expenses going. And so that's another thing. We're a year round employer. We don't lay people off and shut our doors for the off seasons like a lot of ski towns do. So that's been a big deal for me, as well as I have a lot of employees who own houses here. This is one of the most expensive economies in the whole country. So to be able to own a house here it's a really big deal.
Yeah, and that, as they've said, and I think it still is, even though some disagree that it's going away, is the American dream of owning a house, and especially if you're young or starting out, and it's very challenging to, yeah, you got to put in the hard work, but yeah, that's I think pretty important. And again, obviously, what you've described is the opportunities you give your employees, or the the benefits, or the that gives them the whole, so they don't have to worry about other things, or have to, where they can focus 100% on, at the distillery, or the other parts of the business, as opposed to worrying about, how am I going to pay for this, or medical bills, or a second job, or so forth, which is great that you can have a really good workforce. Well, what's your, besides you and your husband, how, let me see if I'm going to try to say this right. How long's uh, what's your, not oldest employee, but what's your most tenured employee?
Well, my husband doesn't work for the company. He helped me get it off the ground, and he has worked for me on and off, but he doesn't currently work at Montanya. It's really my baby. People get that confused a lot, so don't worry. My longest time employee of the moment is my head distiller, Renee Newton. She's been with me now for 7 years. So it's been, there reached a point in time where I could no longer keep my arms around all the different tasks that I was doing, running a bar, running a distillery, bottling rum, doing all the sales. I was until April of 2020, I was a sales force of one that whole time. So it's yeah, she's been my right hand. She's bartended. She's gone and done events. She's an amazing distiller. She now manages a distilling team of 3 full-time distillers. So it's all changed quite a lot, but she's amazing. And then I have a number of other longtime employees as well. My general manager at my bar has been with me over 5 years now. I could go on, but
No, it's great because that's something that a lot of businesses, maybe those that are in at a corporate level, that has a structure, but it's still some of the principles I think are there. Like turnover turnover is very costly, and again, you'd have to bring folks up to speed and so forth. But the one thing I found, which it probably you may think it's it just makes sense. But I think I don't really know how many, and again, when I say this, my pool to reference from is probably pretty small, but I don't know how many, craft distilleries have a vision as you've listed on the website there. And I think again, without having that vision where, the conductor, the employees, everyone knows exactly, what the mission is and what the goals are. And, and I found that, again, very, very, again, refreshing, or, to kind of, again, this is a business. It's, here's what we do, here's what we're about, and staying by these vision and to kind of keep everybody's compass all in the same direction there. So, yeah, I don't know.
well, I mean, I have never really just wanted to sell a product. I came more out of the healthcare world for years. I have a master of science, but it's more kind of epidemiology focused, which turned out to be a very strange coincidence during a pandemic. I also had a master's in epidemiology, but and I've always really been about community health, community well-being in all of my jobs. From you don't want to know,
Yeah.
over 50, we'll just say, and
Oh, you're 20. You're 29. Come on.
a lot of jobs over the years. And so this was really a way for me of being like, yeah, rum is a vehicle, and I love rum, but that's not the be all end all for me. For me, it's using business as a way to do good work, to be a force for good in my community, with my employees, with my bigger rum industry, to force some conversations that are important to happen. And it's been so cool over the last decade to kind of plant some seeds and now watch how they've taken root, and those conversations are much more widespread and much more common than they used to be. Talking about sugarcane workers and their well-being, talking about environmental impacts of effluent and wastewater in the distilling process. Like, I could go on for days. The impact of glass and how important it is that we think about where our glass comes from. Paper and POS and all the collaterals that we throw around all the time, and what's happening to them, and what are they made from. And so, those are conversations that were not happening in the industry, and they're now starting to be pretty common, which I love.
Right. Yeah, and I think the the slogan, or not, maybe the slogan's not the right. Think globally, act locally, right? Is so important. Yeah, we can't solve the whole world, but again, we can do what we can with our own little area to at least hopefully, make things better. And again, some of those things grow into a bigger initiatives or benefits. So I guess that kind of I think is a good segue into and I may say it wrong, but so tell us about I can't even say it. There's Thank you. So
Well, I was traveling. I haven't been traveling in 2020 and early 2021 the same way as I used to, but for a decade I was on the road half the time, working with distributors and meeting really important and influential people in the rum world in different ways and going to rum fests and things like that. And I realized one day that I couldn't any longer feel comfortable with the extent to which I was leaving a trail of trash. One day I collected it all, what everybody handed me when I was trying to get to go lunch in an airport or whatever, and I just thought, I can't do this anymore. If I'm saying out loud that I run a sustainable company, then I can't be part of this system anymore. I have to have a way to no longer accept all of this throwaway single-use plastic and trash throughout my day. And so there wasn't really any strategy for that out there. So I began creating these little kits for myself where everywhere I went I had reusable containers and reusable straw and cutlery and napkin, cup and water bottle and just everything. Not just the cup, not just the water bottle, but like the whole kit and caboodle. And as I was traveling around, people would be like, "Oh my God, I need that. Where can I get that?" And of course, being the entrepreneur I am, I was like, "Okay, let's make them." So Zoetica has been a really, it's a lifestyle brand for people who want to eliminate single-use trash from their everyday. So from their kitchens, from their travel, from going to work, sending their kids to school, whatever. If they want to just make a commitment and say no more,
right.
we have something for every situation to eliminate. It's been really hard during COVID because a lot of companies out there have said no more. We won't accept your reusables. We won't let you use your reusables. But
Right.
at the same time, everybody's bringing their lunch more often because they're not going to restaurants on their lunch break or whatever. So it's it's a game to try to keep that one focused where we can during the pandemic.
Right.
It's been a really fun adventure.
Yeah. No, and that has been a real challenge there too. Is during the pandemic here, everything's gone just single use and throw it away. No, and I think we go back to probably for the 80s, where a lot of the big push for reduce, reuse, recycle. And again, I'm old enough to remember a lot of the commercials and back in about how important recycling was back then. And here we go, fast forward 30 years ish, and it's still there. But then you hear some unfortunate stories where people are going through the separating out the recyclables, and it's just not ending up where they thought it was supposed to go, or maybe we've gotten a little bit of away from that. But hopefully, the next younger generations after us, where they're bringing that back to the biggest debate here. And I don't know, Karen, if it's kind of made it the other to the west coast, is, or at least in Colorado. Here in Florida, the big push over the last year was the plastic straws, and how important to the environment, and especially with Florida being a peninsula state where there's water all around us, and how it ends up in the ocean, and how that's a whole separate thing about ocean waste and trash that gets just dumped in there, and then how it impacts the wildlife, etc. I think it's some of these things that, we won't definitely get political and kind of whatever, but I think these little things that change. Look, we're not things aren't going to change overnight, but I think most people are just asking for, let's look at it to make small little changes that will make things better in the long term. And so plastic straws. There's a huge This is here. There was a big blow up at it.
And that's kind of my strategy in life is I can't always change the world. I'm not a politician. I don't even always believe politicians are the best suited to change the world because they come in these 2 and 4 year cycles, and next thing we all know they're just gone, and everything they did got unraveled, or whether it was good or bad.
Right.
And so my focus has always been to just really be local, to myself and to my own business and to my own what I expect from my own employee group and what I do when I travel and what I expect of events that I participate in, things like that. That's where I can influence. And it was kind of cool because in Crested Butte we eliminated plastic straws and plastic cups and plastic everything a really long time ago. But we also started talking about it, and we could have just done it and kept quiet, but we started talking about what we did and how we did it and how we became certified plastic neutral and etc. And businesses around us in our own community are like, we want to do that too. How do we do it? And then all of a sudden, you can't get a plastic straw in this entire ski town. And there are drinks and cocktails flying. Like, we're busier here than most of us have ever been. We're not suffering to have customers in this pandemic because everybody's left the cities and come here because they can be outside doing things. And so, we've definitely set the trend on that. But what I find is, sometimes we have to talk about what we do and how we do it. So we just, fired up this biodigester where all of our bar and restaurant waste is going into this like magical machine. We've done 800 pounds of restaurant waste in the last like 3 weeks. It's been crazy. But these are things that we talk about because who knows, the next restaurant over might be like, I want that machine. How did you get it? Where did you get it? And then we start a trend, and next thing you know, like every company in Crested Butte will have a biodigester, and we won't be sending all this colossal amount of food waste to the landfill or distilling waste.
Right.
We do use it for distilling waste as well.
And I think it takes that one. Sometimes somebody's just got to do that step forward. It may not be popular, but again, a person has to have conviction and passion about something, and those that have that will see it through the good and the bad and the bumps, but are very so strong about that opinion. And like even how long they've been talking about electric cars, forever, and just somebody the other day had said GM, I guess, is switching over by 2025. I could have the numbers wrong. But yeah, I mean, that's a huge jump. Take big step forward. And of course, there's going to be an impact to other industries because of this shift. But that's all about evolution, right? There's things die off and then new things grow from it. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. And if we just stay in the same paradigm forever because it's comfortable, or because someone's going to resist or object, which happens to me all the time. When I say to an event that I want to participate in, yes, I will participate, but I can't use plastic cups. So I need this event to provide glass or to, let me provide glass or whatever. And so often people are just like, no way, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. We don't have to participate, but I'm not going to contribute. And events around the United States are just such a huge contributor to, where I live, our closest recycling for plastic cups is 250 miles away.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter whether you put it in the recycling, it's not going to likely get there. So we have to to be creative and think about other ways to deal with recycling.
All right.
So,
Very, very true. So, in the sense of your, so I got a sense that um, has entrepreneurship been in your blood, or have you been around that your whole life? Because it takes a certain, you know, I guess person to kind of be very much, to carry forward and with things that their goals are.
well, my dad was an attorney, and he had his own practice when I was growing up. So I have really strong memories of like living in the tiny apartment above his office when he went out on his own and decided to start his own law practice after leaving someone else's business. Actually worked for a bank for a long time, and I just remember we had no money, and we knew it was going to be a while before he established a certain clientele, and so we lived in this tiny little apartment. I couldn't stand up in my bedroom, I remember, and it was just like understood that you paid your dues and you worked really hard, and he was such a like deeply ethical, integrity filled human being, and he took care of a lot of people's lives, and that was really inspiring to me. And he was also really involved eventually, after our many arguments about the environment. He came around a long way and got involved with the Audubon Society and preservation of land, public lands, and things like that. So he was definitely a huge influence in my life. He died 23 years ago, and there are many days when I wish I could ask him for advice. So I know he was a big inspiration, but he never spoke with me about business. He never said, let's talk about what it takes to be an entrepreneur and run your own company and deal with payroll and whatever, which he might have if I'd been a boy. I don't know, maybe not. But I some days I get frustrated because I'm like, why didn't he see me as someone who could potentially have a business of my own? He was from a different generation, so I've had to really pull my own bootstraps up without much help. But yes, I come from entrepreneurship, but mostly not like small business entrepreneurship. That's just something that I have come to love on my own.
Right. And that part of that's your story, like we said, we talked about a little bit about was, you were in one career, had went, education in certain another thing, but yet you kind of keep adapting and like you said again, evolving and growing, and again, no fear, not afraid. And like our last week's guest and Shanice, she just kind of up and moved to New Orleans to go, make music, and it's like, wow, there's that sense of excitement, a sense of, but again, if you have a path forward and you truly believe in what you're doing, then that's enough for it. That's enough for most people. So. So when did you form the Women's Distillery Guild? So talk a little bit about that.
Well, years and years ago, there was an organization called Ladies of American Distilleries, and it started actually as the wives of these distillers, 10 and more years ago. Um, and they created a little group, and I kind of got pulled into it because I was a woman, but I was like, I'm not anybody's wife, I'm like running the show here. And over time, I started to help the leadership of this Ladies of American Distilleries, evolving it toward in a different direction. And eventually the founder was like, I'm done. Could you take it over? Do what you want with it. And so I said I wanted to change. Well, I didn't say. I did a survey of all the 75 members at that point and just said, does this name work for you? Does it represent who you are? And by and large, the response was no. And we decided through a whole process that we would call it the Women's Distillery Guild, because then it would include women who distilled, but also women who worked in distilleries and maybe worked in tasting rooms and maybe worked, on marketing and sales and promotion and stuff like that. So then a couple years ago, we've kind of formed an alliance with an organization called Women of the Vine and Spirits, which is based in New York. They had all the beautiful architecture of a nonprofit organization, online webinars, and all this great stuff that we were trying to build. And I thought, let's not duplicate efforts here. And so we've had I was just on a International Women's Day event with them first thing this morning, and really working on giving women a place to educate themselves. There's a foundation now that we donate to, Montanya donates to, that helps women get WSET certifications and advance their credentials and things like that. So it's been really satisfying to work on. And I just felt like women needed a place where they could safely ask questions, because you go on some of these online forums and you ask a question about rum, or you ask a question about business or something, and next thing you know, there are like 20 horrible comments where people are just like, why don't you know this? And what kind of dumb person are you, or whatever? And I would just notice these women getting really dejected. Like, I just want to learn, but how do you learn when you're so afraid to ask questions? So that was the real genesis of the Women's Distillery Guild. And we're still called that, but we're a subgroup of Women of the Vine and Spirits. And they have an annual global symposium out in Napa that's pretty amazing. Not this year, obviously, and not last year, but it'll come back.
Oh, I can only imagine if it's next year, it's going to be a heck of an event.
Yeah, great.
So, and that's awesome, because you're right. There's a lot of great information that's out there on the web, but then there's those that love to show off how much somebody knows over somebody else, when you're, rather than trying to take them in and offer. And in what do they say, it takes more muscles to frown than it does smile, or something to that effect. And I don't know, unfortunately, as much as we've all had to succumb to some sort of level of social media to promote, or again, it's also unfortunately become a real bummer of a thing. It's become it makes it on social media, unfortunately. But that's great to at least provide a better platform for folks for women that are trying to learn more, and again, that diversity part, and I'm still trying to establish tastings and be able to discern certain things when sampling rum, or for any other distilled spirits for that part. But I'm sure there's certain things that women can taste or sense that maybe men can't, or there's certain, again, that's part of that diversity. Is it's not all right. We'd all have, if it was just a bunch of guys, it would just all be, like you said, the same boring thing, and nothing that everyone would have known that there was a whole nother world out there. So.
And that's one thing, I participate in this business group, and it's one of the things that we're really clear on, is that diverse working groups, it doesn't matter whether it's an event or an association or a business or a bar or a restaurant or a college, or it just doesn't matter. When there's diversity, and that includes not only gender but also age and color and ethnicity and different representations from different parts of the world and the country even. Those working groups are way more creative and way more able to get everybody involved in a decision or in a project. And I come from a county that is 98% white, and my staff is 75% white. And so, we've really worked diversity inside our doors, even though it's not always outside our doors. Many Colorado ski towns are just pretty white because they're very expensive to live in. There haven't been great opportunities, but we're at Montanya. We're working to change that every day, and it's working.
And part of that is, does that tie into some of your partnerships with the local university?
Not necessarily, although two of my BIPOC employees they've graduated from Western, so that's been great. But no, I think it's more about it's just we've had to fight some hard battles. We just had one last week, and we just have to stand up and kind of say, no, this is not acceptable, and that's not comfortable, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes time and energy, and it's not selling rum, which is my primary focus in life. But it's been so important to me. So I'm willing to put the time and the effort and the energy in, and also make room for my employees to put the time and energy and effort in as well.
Right.
It's not just me; it's all of us.
And when we had our pre-show chat, and you'd mentioned that you had received capital funding from Constellation, and that only about, let me see if I read this right. So female-only founded companies receive about 2.9% of venture capital in the U.S., and banks offer women fewer approval for loans and generally smaller loans than their male colleagues. Is that just the stereotypical that women, male, or I mean, I'm sure, that's unfortunate, because again, too, is that we were supposed to be living in a very, probably one of the most diverse countries in the world, available to people. Are so have this is why people come here, trying to come into the U.S. every day for a better life, and here's things like simply like that, where it's unfortunate that those things still exist.
Well, here's how it happens. We tend to, because it's easy, surround ourselves with people that we recognize and people that seem like us, right? So if you're a venture capital company, historically, the reality is that your whole deciding board is white men over the age of 50, because that's who's worked their way up into those positions of residing on a board of a large multi-billion-dollar corporation. And then when those people are asked to make decisions about what companies to look at to fund with venture capital, they're looking for themselves. Like, oh, well, this person reminds me of myself when I was just starting out, or this person went to a similar school that I went to, or was in the same fraternity that I was in. Like, those types of reinforced circles happen all the time. So until we have more women on venture capital boards making decisions, until we have more people of color and of diverse ethnicities and ages on those boards, they're not going to choose to fund companies like mine. That was just the reality. So Constellation, I think, has done an amazing job of saying, where are the gaps? Who are the business owners who are doing an amazing job, or equally amazing, or in the case of women and people of color, often twice as amazing as their other colleagues in the business, but they're not getting their fair share of capital. And if we put capital behind them, what can they do? What will they show us?
Right.
So Constellation created not only the Female Founders Fund, which I was the first craft distillery to receive those funds, but also they created a Black Distillers Fund as well. And so that just was announced in 2020. And so they're supporting, with venture capital, Black distillery founders as well. So it just kind of goes on and has huge potential to be really cool, but we have to break those paradigms somehow.
Right.
Not easy.
Very true. It's a good thing that if you look back in this world, that if every country didn't sail across the sea. I mean, I don't want to get too much because I know there's a whole, whole big thing. But again, how we all, if everybody stayed in wherever they originated from many thousands of years ago, yeah, we would have never had. Just think about what it would have been like then. But so we've talked a lot of great stuff. Obviously, one of the parts of the name of the podcast. We've talked about a great, your the business, and but we got to talk about the other part of here, the music part. So this is kind of really awesome. So I've started to, again, as I've been doing the podcast and meeting a lot of distillers and from all over the U.S., and I'm starting to find more and more have a little bit more to offer than just making rum and bottling at their location. And I'm trying to talk a few buddies into who play music also. I said, I want to take the podcast on the road. We're going to go tour distilleries. That's going to be our new thing here. So you don't just have a distillery, as you mentioned. You have live music at down in at the restaurant and the tasting room and everything there. So what type of music do you have in the weekly or how often?
Gosh, it's all over the map. We've definitely gotten a certain reputation for supporting original musicians who are playing all their own music. So not covers, not coming in and playing someone else's music. So we've had a lot of aspiring musicians come from North Carolina and California and all over the country with their own albums, and it's been really exciting for me because I've met some incredible musicians and watched them become really famous and go on European tours and come out with an album on a real record label and just all that stuff. So we have a couple of musicians who their tradition used to be really called gypsy jazz, but that's really not what they do. And gypsy is a pejorative term, so they don't really use that anymore. But
Right.
really traditional music from Eastern Europe, but also original music that they've created in that tradition. So Ryan Flores was one of our favorite house performers, and a band called Roma Ransom. These are all bands that you can pretty easily find on the internet. And then also, like Sean James and the Shapeshifters, this really amazing kind of band from essentially the Deep South. He came and did a couple of acoustic shows with us, and then now he's just on fire, and will be very famous.
For some reason, that name rings a bell. For some reason.
Yeah, he's from, I can't remember. I'm trying to remember the town that he's from, but anyway, it's a big music university town in the South. They call it like swamp rock or swamp.
Oh, is it Gainesville? No.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Check him out. His
Okay.
music is incredible, and his original stuff is just jaw dropping.
So we were trying to play there in our mid-show rum review last week. For your podcast, we had Alex from the Rum Barrel give us a review of the Exclusiva. And we're gonna come back because we haven't actually even talked about the products yet, really. And the underlying music for the mid show rum review is a good friend of mine here. He's a soloist and does his own show, and it's called Once Upon a Bottle of Rum. So I'll have to send you the link to the song. I think you'd kind of find it very interesting. He spent many years touring on cruise ships, playing the cruise ship circuit, and of course in a different port every day, and stories about bottle of rum. And again, there's always a good story that starts with a once upon a bottle of rum, and I'm sure you definitely dig that tune by Brad Brock. And as well as I've got to tell, Shanice was our guest last week. She's a drummer, but she's also in a uke duo, and her band called, it's called the Little Things Duo, and they're just awesome. Their sounds, their harmonies, and so forth. So I'm gonna tell them, it's like, I'm gonna send you, I'm gonna point you west. Go see Karen. Go over there. Um, so you're, as well as too, is you're a musician yourself, and or you sing as well, and I checked out the song. You got an awesome voice. I love listening to that, the song you sent over that we're going to feature here for the podcast. And it's, again, just listening to it, it's very vivid to have in my imagination, just kind of listen to the words that you're singing there. So you've music has also been there most of your life as well too.
I started playing the saxophone. So I played the saxophone for 12 years and was in a touring band for quite a long time. I played the alto sax. That was my huge passion for so long. But I found, you can't really, as a grown up, like hang out with your friends and just pull out the sax and play. So, as I got older, my opportunities for playing music kept dropping off. And I also love to sing. And I have a music partner that I've now played music with for 27 years. He plays the guitar. I play some mandolin, although, I'm kind of a hack. Um, but we do a lot of complicated multi-part harmonies with ourselves and other musicians that we invite in, and yeah, I love it. And that recording that I sent you, it should be noted, was recorded on my, iPhone voice memo. So it's not exactly a high production value type of recording, but we've had a lot of fun learning songs and learning multi-part harmonies and really going deep.
Well, it is definitely amazing that what the iPhones, as can do. So that's definitely so we'll when do you think you'll have a release of the music?
Well, he's coming back to town in 2 weeks, and so it's our goal to keep um, cultivating recordings of the music and get the recording quality to be better every time. So we'll see. No promises.
Very cool. And if you're looking to fill in, I'm not trying to plug myself here. I'm actually going to try to plug something else. Is which, by the way, I would have no problem bringing the cajon and so forth. It's something called air gigs. If you've ever heard of it, where if you're looking for a particular type of musician or instrument or something, it's kind of like you put it out there and people can kind of pick up the gigs, right? That's what they call air gigs. And say, hey, I'm looking for a person to play the triangle or whatever, and here's the song. Here's what I need to do is to play your parts and so forth. So if that's ever something that again, in the age of electronics and the technology now, where you don't even have to be sitting in the same room, back in the old days and so forth. There's always something like that if you're ever looking for other musicians to kind of from all over the world too.
That's great. Yeah.
Yep.
Crested Butte's kind of a hotbed of musical talent, so I haven't had to go too far yet, but it's great to know.
Very cool. So let's as we start kind of wrapping up here, as save the best for last. So, Montanya, the products you have. Can you tell us is that five? I think it's four products that you have, right? Can you go ahead and give a rundown of what you offer?
Sure, yeah. Four rums that range in age. Well, really, over the course of the time that I've been in business, it's been five. My oldest in the bottle is 4 years, but it's 100% 4 years aged. And then my youngest is about a year to 18 months aged. So Platino and Oro are both aged in American white oak for about 12 to 18 months. The Oro goes in the barrel first when it's come straight to us from the whiskey distiller, so it's a little wet and fresh with the whiskey that was in it previously. And it doesn't get any carbon filtration, just particle filtration. And then the Platino gets carbon filtration. So it comes out of the barrel with color. It's a traditional aged rum, but then we carbon filter it with coconut husk carbon to make it a white rum, because I love my daiquiris, and I want my white rum to be as well aged as my dark rum most of the time. It gives it a lot of complexity, but if you use most types of filtration, you would lose the benefits of age. But with coconut husk carbon or those more natural carbons like wood or pine or things like that, it leaves the flavor, leaves some of the complexities behind, and takes the color. And those both go into Law's Whiskey House Barrels, which is a Colorado company that we collaborate with. And then the Exclusiva is 3 years old, 2.5 years in an American white oak whiskey barrel from Law's, and then the last 6 months in a French oak barrel that previously held Cabernet Sauvignon port from another partner company that we work with. And then the Valentia is the one that's 4 years of age, 3 3/4 years in American white oak, and then it goes into a finishing rye cask from Catoctin Creek in Virginia, which is a fellow female head distiller. So we, every single aspect of the Valentia is touched by women, female distilled, female bottling crew, female distiller of the whiskey barrel, literally like the forklifts and everything is done by women. And we did that because we got tired of being asked all the time, like, what, how hard has it been being a woman in your business? Which it was, and it has been, and we've told those stories many times. But we got a little tired of that and wanted to celebrate how much we do, what we do, how successfully we do it, how delicious it is, how special it can be, and how many women, are doing this work around the country. And so our Valentia we released in 2019, and we have that as part of our regular lineup. And for every every quarter we make a donation to Women of the Vine and Spirits Foundation to support other women in the industry looking to kind of get better educated. So it's been a really fun project, and it's got a really nice spicy rye finish on it. So the Exclusiva's got a little more tannic, vinous quality finish. It's very dry. The Valentia is probably our driest, and then the Ora's a little touch sweeter. It has a tiny touch of added caramelized honey, which is very non-traditional in the world of kind of obsessive rum people, like which I appreciate and love. But I don't operate in a GI or an AOC or any sort of geographic requirements for how I make my rum. There's never been a mountain American tradition of rum until me, so I get to decide. And I think Montanya is really, it's such a tiny, tiny, tiny amount, but it brings a little local terroir from the bees around our distillery, and it's something that I think is really unique to our company and our products. So that's in both the Ora and the Platino, and it's also in the Exclusiva, but not very much in the Exclusiva, not very much in any of them.
Right.
But you'll get a little hint of it, and it brings out some of the natural flavors in the rum as well as from the barrel. Hopefully when you taste it, you'll be like, oh yeah, I get that. It's very much in the background. But.
So that leads into the next great question. There is so where can they find your products there? If we're not in Colorado.
Well, it really matters by state. So we've put on our website a really effective tool for especially people living in like New York, New Jersey, California, Texas, Colorado, some of our bigger markets where you can put your zip code in and it will pull up where the closest rum is to you. We've also put on our website all of the online retailers that sell it around the country. So if you were in Chicago, you could get it delivered right to your door by a spirit hub. Or if you were in California, you could get it delivered right to your door by a number of different liquor stores who are doing home delivery. So We try to use our website. You just go to the button that says, find the rum. But we're about to add a feature where you can order it on our own website and it will ship direct for people who are having trouble finding it, which is a lot of people. And then, like in North Dakota and South Dakota and all these smaller markets, you just have to go into a liquor store and ideally know our distributor in that state. So we just signed a deal with Whole Foods for the entire west of the Mississippi, almost every liquor licensed Whole Foods. So that's an easy way, but also that has opened up some great distribution to make it easier to get the rum in those states like Nebraska and Iowa and Kansas.
Karen, it's amazing that as much as stuff that we've now become an Amazon society, right, where everything is just buying online and come to your door the next day, is that how, and again, I understand that with spirits, there's obviously a lot of reasons why it's a little bit more steps to go through. But yeah, it's talking to other fellow distillers is how it's very it's very tough to kind of get product out there or make it easy, acceptable. And again, you describing there, you put in that effort to, that work that you got to be able to get it out to the masses that are maybe outside the distribution chain that you currently have. And so I'm definitely going to go check that out on the website and order something through one of the online companies there. So do you?
And the new online company is actually based in Florida. So yeah, it's called. It will be directly linked from our website. It's kind of almost a rum club. It's really cool.
Okay, definitely. I know. I'm looking forward to that. And so I think one last quick question here is about rum. Do you do any contract distilling?
I have for sure over time. I'm not doing that right now because my own inventory has been so challenged to keep up with demand. So I haven't had much to make available to anyone else. But we did sell some rum to a company in the Netherlands called Skier. Some people say Sheer, but it's actually pronounced Skier, which is one of the most prominent and well-respected rum blending houses in the world. And they have some, so if someone wants to use Montanya rum to make a blend of their own or be part of a blend, or they want to make their own private label using Montanya rum, they can go to Skier in the Netherlands and put a deal like that together.
Oh, pretty cool. All right, so I got a little bit here I have with all my guests. Again, it's nothing crazy, right? So for the drummers, it's called in 4 beats or less, and these are just simple, like a yes or no or this or that kind of question. No real SAT type questions. So, but for the rummers, it's actually called in 4 sips or less. So again, obviously, but as a musician, I guess it could be 4 beats or less. So, all right. So, what's the best concert you attended?
Rainbow Kitten Surprise at Red Rocks.
That is an awesome name.
They're incredible.
Hold on, I'm writing that down because because that's a lot of words for me to try to remember. So Rainbow Kitten Surprise.
People call them RKS.
Hey.
Yeah, super. Like being at Red Rocks. I know it's supposed to be one word, but being at Red Rocks with a completely full group of people, like every seat was full, and I thought I was the only one who knew how cool they were. Clearly, me and all the other 22-year-olds knew how cool they were.
Oh, all right. The beach or the mountains?
Mountains.
So this is kind of a little bit more long one here. So I'm going to save for the last one. So, all right. So as the conductor managing the day-to-day operations and making rum, if you can only do one or the other, which would it be? Either solely making the rum, or running the operations and not making the rum. Uh-oh.
I would choose to conduct, not because I don't love every aspect of the company, but because I can't focus on just that long enough. I'm a multitasker.
So if you could start all over again, what would you do differently? I know that's kind of a loaded, but I know what would come to mind.
I would have done a little more market research and understood. I didn't even know about the three-tiered system when I started a craft distillery roughly 13 years ago. There was so much I didn't know. I didn't really put together. I'm not necessarily a fan of the classic business plan, but I think I should at least have understood the route to market.
Fair enough. So, and in closing, what advice or inspiration can you share with those hesitant on pursuing their passion?
I would say that at the end of the day, if it wasn't fun, your whole life is going to be a little bit challenged, So at least spend your days doing something that you can love, even if it's not being an entrepreneur. Not everybody has the luxury of, taking the risks that I have taken. But I would just say, never underestimate the importance of fun at work.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, Karen, I totally enjoyed this afternoon. So, do you have any closing comments, remarks, or anything to kind of have people check out or promote?
No, I'm just really looking forward to seeing people in person again. I'm getting my vaccine tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah, I'm very excited to hug people.
I know. I started off the podcast with the idea of, sitting there, sharing a bottle, talking, having a conversation. And then I got 2 podcast episodes in, and then the lockdown happened. I said, well, this is going to be really tough to drink, by myself. And I think there's a word for that. But yeah, being around, people, and again, it's it's definitely for those that are not introverts. I think the introverts rejoiced last year, but all the extroverts have been dying to get to break free.
It was our turn.
Yeah.
Been suffering long enough.
So, excellent. So I like to thank you, Karen, for coming on the podcast and talking about, your passion for making rum. Also, one thing, definitely want to let everybody know to check out on your website is the Little Book of Cocktails. So go ahead and check that out and download that. So I think you got to, subscribe with an email address, or I think something like that. So, which definitely was a great little read that I had downloaded from the website. So this podcast will be available on all your favorite podcast locations this Thursday now, March 11th. Also tune in for their next live stream with Celebration Distillation CEO Katie Darling. And also check out the Drums and Rums podcast and give it a like and follow. Lots of other great episodes that are out there. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all that, as well as the website, drumsandrubs.com. And before we wrap up, Karen, so I have that's free product placement for Custom Ink, I guess. So I got you. So everyone who comes on the podcast, I've got them. I get them a shirt there. So this will be in the mail to you. You're welcome. So I figured the shirts for all the guests, just a little token of appreciation for those that come onto the podcast, and also hopefully get enough shirts out there that I've had guests in Europe and so forth, and at least to know that somebody's walking around wearing a shirt. So well, I appreciate it again, Karen, for coming on. Stay warm. I won't tell you what the temperature here is.
I just came back from 2 weeks in California, so I'm good. I've had my beach.
Excellent. So we'll definitely, hopefully, if you're ever in Florida, hopefully maybe meet up with you. But again, celebrate Women's Day, Women's International Day, as well as Women's Month, Women's History Month, if I can get that right. And again, appreciate it. Was a great conversation, Karen. Great information you shared, and talking about your journey, your passion, and again, in a and for other women out there to kind of see that it can be done. And again, there's others out there that are out there to help, and avenues for all that too. And again, just the doing good. With the community and sustainability and diversity. I think three important things. Obviously, kind of you feel good at the end of the day of what you're doing. So, but yep, yep. Thanks, Karen. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye. Whew. I don't think I had that many people. Stop.